What's up, Lego builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios. It's been smooth sailing these past couple of Mimban updates, but this joyride of a series is about to come to a screeching halt. I need to start the Imperial base, and for maybe the first time in Coconut Brick Studios history, I have no idea what I'm doing. Just kidding, that's my average Tuesday. But in all seriousness, I don't have a clear vision on how to build the base, so I'm making that my main focus, and we'll end this week with a foundation for it or die trying. I might also be doing some cool stuff with barbed wire, so if you're ready to hopefully see some base progress, make sure to execute Order 66 on that like button, and let's get to work. All right, time to build an Imperial base.
Psst. Hey, buddy.
Huh? Who said that?
Hey, over here.
What?
Remember me?
Since the dawn of this series a long 3 weeks ago, I've been going back and forth on the idea of adding a black frame to Mimban. It's not a very important or interesting part of the mock, but if I want to add one, it needs to be in before the foundation walls are finished, and the longer I wait, the more work it'll be. I had decided to leave it off, but asked for feedback in the last update, and took an arrow to Denis pointed out that it'll cover up the sides of the base plates, which are different colors. That simple observation sealed the deal, and now I need to do some minor reconstructive modifying to the walls and add headlight bricks in order to attach the frame. This is not the most exciting way to start a building update, but not to worry, this will be over faster than Jar Jar Binks' run as Naboo representative and be a lot less destructive to the overall galaxy. And I can stop debating the pros and cons of a black strip of plate in my sleep. Now we can get back to the good stuff, base building. I realized the base is going to need to take up even more space, so I had to add in a couple more rows of foundation plate to accommodate it. Okay, so I have everything laid out and I went to start building and realized I had some really, not problems, but really tough, impactful decisions to make that are going to drastically affect the layout of the base and the rest of the mock and probably, the overall appearance of the entire build. Just, your typical everyday business decisions. The base is gonna be right here, and I made a rough layout of kind of how big it's gonna be. I'm trying to figure out where it's gonna go and what angle it's gonna sit at, because originally I was gonna have it sitting at an angle just because recently I've been getting into placing my builds at different angles than you would typically see on a Lego mock, trying to build stuff so it's not directly sitting on studs, just to make things look a little bit cooler, look a little bit more realistic. That being said, my plan for the base was to have it sit at an angle kind of like this, and so I was going to use these big wedge plates to create a little frame. That way when I slide the foundation of the mock into place, I can still build around the actual base, but then it's going to sit at an angle from the rest of the build. But then when I went ahead and did that, the angle I feel like is just not that impressive, right? Like it's barely off centered from 90 degrees, not really making much of a difference. And this way of building is going to create a lot more work for me, and it's going to be a lot more restrictive in the fact that instead of just building right on these plates to build the base, I'm going to have to build a little frame, probably out of 16 by 16 plate. So that's going to be even more money spent than if I just made the base straight. The second thing is, if I were to go this route of building a frame around the mock, once I build that frame and put this plate in place, it's gonna be a lot more of a pain to adjust it because I'm gonna have to rip up all the wedge plates and surrounding terrain. Then I have to adjust the size of the base in increments of these 3 by 12 wedge plates, since I can't just increase it by like 6 studs or something, and then I use a couple of these 2 by 3 wedge plates because their angles won't match the rest of the frame. So I have to use these, which will limit my ability to fine tune the overall size and shape of this base. And all that work would just be so I could have this slight angle going off to the side, which in the grand scheme of things, I don't really think is gonna affect the overall look of the mock or improve it that much. So I honestly think I'm just gonna keep it straight like this. This does create some more problems. It's just a domino effect right now, because my initial plan was I wanted the base to be big enough to be able to hold the juggernaut. And so I wanted to have it at an angle, because if I had it straight and then, have the trench right here, the juggernaut's not gonna be able to pull out of the base. Like, it's gonna have to make a pretty sharp turn, you know what I mean, to like squeeze in between the trench and the base to be able to get out, which I felt like just wouldn't really look cool and would be too cramped to look realistic. So if I had the base at an angle, the turbo tank could kind of pull out this way and then drive off into battle. But now that I'm not doing it at an angle, I don't think I'm gonna be able to have the turbo tank be able to fit in the base, which honestly probably is a good thing, because Look how much space this little turbo tank takes up. And the one I'm building is gonna be bigger than this. I don't wanna build that massive base, put the turbo tank in it, and then not really even have a way for it to be able to drive in and out. That will allow me to have a lot more flexibility with how big the base is, what's going on inside, because if I don't have the Juggernaut in there, I can have smaller walkers like those being worked on. I could have some other vehicles, repair bays, different stuff going on. I hope that wasn't too convoluted and confusing, but basically what I've decided is just putting the base in parallel to the rest of the mock is gonna be a lot more efficient and allow me to have a lot more creative control and freedom with it, and it's just gonna be less work and parts. So now that I finally have that figured out, we can actually get started on it. I need the whole floor to be raised up a couple of plates so the base is above ground level, but before I can do that, I need to add a grease pit of sorts with some subfloor channels running out from it. This is gonna be the maintenance bay, so I thought it would be cool to have a hole in the floor with a grate over the top so vehicles could stand on it and get sprayed down before they get worked on. Since Mimban's pretty muddy, and I bet some of those walkers come in caked to the turret in mud and grime. This isn't going to be your typical military base of a bunch of different shapes and buildings bristling with weapons and turrets. I see this as a repair and command base set further behind friendly lines, so its job is to keep the Imperial war machine fixed up and organized, so it's not meant to fight off enemy forces or field massive armies like my classic clone base did. I'm keeping the shape simple and basically building a giant airplane hangar looking thing with angled walls. To keep those up, I'm building some large support pillars. I've got two designs. One is just a solid chunk of slope and brick, and the other one has a gap in the middle running the length of the pillar. There's no practical reason behind this, I just wasn't sure if the first option would be too simplistic, so I made a second more detailed one to compare. This one does look a lot cooler though, but I'm not sure if it makes sense to have a hollow grate running through a foundational support. I'm gonna have 3 on each side with paneled walls of plate and tile in between. I'm sure you're all pretty familiar with this building style at this point, given that's how I build pretty much all my clone bases. It's just such a simple way to build large structures, and I can still adjust the walls fairly easily once they're up. I need to get the maintenance bay all laid out before I can start the walls though, because it's going to have a large mobile crane in it, and I can't have it too close to the side walls or it'll mess things up. The repair crane is going to run back and forth on a little track which pokes up above the surrounding floor. So I made sure to add some caution strips next to each side, because you know someone's getting the old force choke if Lord Vader doesn't see the track and trips on his way to lunch. This has been such a frustrating update because it feels like I have so many things to figure out, but I can't start building one section until the previous one is done, but I can't start that one until something else is figured out. It's turning into a frustrating cycle of indecision, as a lot of the stuff I'm planning around hasn't even been fully designed yet, so it's kind of hard to visualize where exactly everything's going to go. I'm really excited to build the crane. I want it to look something like a moving gantry crane, which is basically 2 towers with a beam in between that holds a hook and winch. The hook and winch can move back and forth on the beam, and the towers will be set on wheels so the whole thing can move up and down on the track I laid. It fits the vibe and is a practical way to show how the tall Imperial walkers can be disassembled and worked on. I knew I needed it to look very mechanical and industrial, so I grabbed as many crane-looking Technic gears and other parts as I could and started fiddling around. I built the side towers using some molded girder pieces that I've been itching to use for ages now because I love that industrial vibe they have. Then I made a round beam for the winch housing to run across. I don't work with Technic very often because I find it difficult and kind of hard to integrate into regular brick and plate builds, but at this small of a scale, it was really enjoyable, and I got to use a bunch of cool pieces that I don't normally use and really break away from the typical building you see here on the channel. I wanted to use a chain instead of a cable to hold the hook so the crane would look even more heavy duty, but I can't wind up the chain, which means the hook can't move up or down and has to stay at this level, which really limits the crane's usefulness. But I decided to just finish building the crane for now and see how it looks before I start adding a working winch. Sometimes you just gotta take a build one step at a time and not try to figure everything out at once. I made a crane operator, but I'm getting annoyed with all these dual printed heads because now it looks like Lord Voldemort is working part-time as an Imperial mechanic. I really need a break from the base, so I'm switching to some fun, easy builds. First, I want to address the bridges. I like the railing on this one, but feel like the other one looks less blocky and more like an actual log bridge. I decided the best option would be to combine the two. Some people suggested using both designs, but I think having just the rounder one is the way to go because of its superior design. Thank you all for leaving feedback when I asked for it. I've been getting so many comments comments on these Mimban updates, which is awesome. The bridges were more of an Easter egg to the Second and First World War, and so is this next build. Adding sections of barbed wire to slow down or block enemy troops seemed like the perfect addition to Mimban. LEGO doesn't make any kind of barbed wire strips, but I got an interesting idea from Scott's Plastic, who makes really cool World War I and World War II mocks. He used chains as barbed wire. To make mine look even more like barbed wire, I twisted the chains a bunch to make the lines look more jagged and, well, barbed. I could not be happier with how these look. It saved me from needing to buy non-LEGO barbed wire, since outside of a select few minifigs and weapons, I don't like to buy non-LEGO. I stuck the barbed wire at differing heights so people can't crawl under or jump over it. Also, I have a LEGO haul, but this is not my typical haul. Yes, there's the usual boring medley of reddish brown stuff for Mimban, but I also got some really cool items, like this dope medium azure bicycle and red wheelbarrow. I've been getting a lot of real world items and tools recently because I've resurrected my second channel, Coconut's Kingdom. I also got some medium azure flowers, which are a must for a very specific Star Wars planet that I'm going to be doing soon. I'm not going to give it away, but drop the planet's name down in the comments if you know. Well, I did it. I have the base foundation in place. It took a lot of planning, deliberating, and pacing around the tables, but I think a lot of the important decisions have been made and I can move forward with more speed and confidence. Laying out a build is always one of the harder parts of large-scale mock building. This repair bay has been a real bright spot amidst the frustration though, because I've had so much fun building it and I think it turned out really good. The crane actually moves on the track, so now I can take the turret off an ATDT and move it around to be swapped out or worked on. I do need to figure out a way to get the hook to raise and lower so it can get high enough to actually remove a turret, but that's a problem for another day. The barbed wire is going to go out here in the wastelands. I'm not going to blanket all the terrain with it, but strategically place patches to drive enemy troops in certain directions and disrupt the flow of an oncoming attack. This will also make the bridges more of an asset, since the Imperials can use them to navigate the barbed wire patches or block access to certain areas of the battlefield. It's really nice to see more and more parts of this build start to come together and become more cohesive. Man, am I glad this week's over. On top of feeling sick, I was crippled with that indecision I was talking about earlier in regards to the base. And it made for a slow grind in the first half of the week, but I could already feel my energy shifting once the foundation was in and I started work on fun builds like the repair bay and barbed wire patch. The good news is next week I'll have a much better idea of how to build the base and have even more fun things to tackle, like an ancient sea monster fossil and, if I'm lucky, a rare functioning door. That's a wrap for this update. Thank you all so much for watching, liking, commenting. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget to let me know what you thought about the mock down below in the comments, and until next time, happy building.